The views and opinions expressed in the following paid pre-recorded program are those of the host, callers, and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the station, its management, or its owners.
Securities offered through Kestra Investment Services, LLC. Kestra IS, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Kestra Advisory Services, LLC. Kestra AS, an affiliate of Kestra IS. Capital Advisory Group, Inc. is not affiliated with Kestra IS or Kestra AS. Neither Kestra IS nor Kestra AS provide legal or tax advice and are not certified public accounting firms.
You work hard for your money. For the next hour, you're going to learn how to keep what's yours. Capital Advisory Group presents Keep What's Yours. Here are Josh Gilbert and Jeff Zufall.
Hello and welcome to Keep What's Yours. I am Josh Gilbert, sitting here with Jeff Zufall. He is the Senior Tax Strategist and Wealth Advisor with Capital Advisory Group. Hello, Jeff.
Hello, how you doing?
Now, I just listened to that intro, and
It's long-winded, isn't it?
a little bit, and there's a lot of stuff in there that pertains to some legal things,
legalese.
and, we got to air that, but, the voiceover guy is like, do you want to keep more of your money?
Yes.
Instead of sending it off to the federal government in the
Yes.
form of taxes. And that's a fun tagline, but let's just put it out there for people. You do not have to pay more than you owe in taxes
Legally obligated.
than what you're legally obligated. It's just there are times where you don't know how to do it.
Yes. There's stuff that you don't realize that you can take a deduction for, and a lot of people just skid right past them. We see it all the time, stuff on tax returns that people miss, strictly because they're like, oh, I didn't know I could do that.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as talking to someone, bringing in your a couple of years of tax returns.
yes,
Bringing in
a couple of most current paycheck stubs.
couple of paycheck stubs, and then just talking to Jeff, and he'll ask you a couple of hey, do you have kids?
Sit down, kind of talk 30, 45 minutes, kind of get a good idea on where you're coming from, what you want done.
Are your
what
kids in school?
Yeah, exactly. What your lifestyle's like. Your kids go to day camp. Do they go to summer camp? All kinds of stuff like that.
And a lot of times it pertains to what we're socking away for retirement. And are we even doing that correctly?
Exactly. A lot of people, younger. I see the younger generations. They're 100% Roth. Older generations are doing all pre-tax in their 401ks. And again, and maybe somewhere depends upon your tax situation, but it could be a combination of both. It's not 100% one way or the other. So.
And I'll tell you this, full disclosure, when I started my retirement account, which was very late in life, my mid-30s, I immediately said, do all Roth.
Yeah.
I don't make a lot of money.
Exactly. And
I
like,
just started in my career.
Never want to pay tax on this ever again.
Yes.
I get that
Pay
concept.
it now. I
Yeah.
don't want to deal with it. Let it accrue.
Yeah.
And then you play the ball game, 59 and a half for 5 years.
Yeah.
You play by the rules of the tax code, and all that money that accrued over the years is yours tax-free.
Exactly.
The other side of the coin.
The other side of the coin is the offset, what you save. Let's assume you're at a 22% tax bracket today, and you put money away pre-tax to then, when you retire, hypothetically drop into a 12% tax bracket. That's basically a 50% tax savings. Then you have the time value of money on that, which is compounding of that pre-tax dollars going in.
You're able to put more in up front.
Exactly. It's pure mathematics. And in some cases it works perfect for people. And in other cases you've got to do an adjustment. Maybe it's 50-50, 60-40, some combination of that going forward.
And you talk about different buckets. You want a little pre-tax, which is your IRA. You want a little post-tax, which is your Roth. You want a little bit just kind of out in the market working.
Exactly. So look at it as money as three buckets. One is basically taxable, which means whatever you put in that bucket, that's a brokerage account. That might be your bank account. Money market, your safe money sitting there, you're going to pay interest. You're going to pay capital gain distributions and maybe capital gains when you sell something. But that's your taxable bucket. You could drive to the bank tomorrow, get that money, and go buy a boat. And then you have the tax deferred bracket. That's your 401ks, 403bs, your retirement plans, where you've put off the taxation to a later date. And then you have basically your tax-free bucket, which is your Roth, which means if the game is played correctly, you follow the rules, you'll never pay tax on that money again.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, when we get done having a conversation with you and we put some of these things in play and April rolls around and we realize, holy cow, we have $1,200 more dollars
in your pocket,
in our pocket throughout the year that would otherwise have gone to the federal government in the form of taxes. We say, oh, well, why haven't we been doing this all along?
Well, again, you don't know what you don't know. That's the problem.
And that's the point of this show.
Yeah.
Is we tell you that these things exist and then hopefully point you in the right direction by calling Jeff. 636-394-5524. Education is one thing.
Yes.
It's, well, how do I get that started in my plan? Well, you call Jeff, and he gets the ball rolling for you. I was talking about you during the week, during the Heidi show, and I've got this one guy that texts in. Maybe it's a woman. I don't know. Because the text line,
you don't know.
Gender neutral. And I said, we implemented this FSA for my son's schooling, and, at the end of the day, we realized we kept, $2,000. All that money would have gone off to the federal government in the form of taxes if we had not done so otherwise. And somebody keeps texting me and says, Josh, you don't get it. You're not keeping $2,000. You're keeping 24% of $2,000. And I'm like, look.
No.
I know how it works because I've gone through the numbers with Jeff, and I reminded this listener, the school costs $12,000.
Exactly. Yes.
The $2,000 is 24%.
Yes.
Of the $12,000.
Yes.
At the end of the day, or whatever it is that the numbers crunch out to, because we got a couple things working with you.
Yeah.
And Jeff can find at least one. If you're not doing anything to save on taxes, Jeff can find you at least one, if not multiple things.
Exactly.
And $1,200 here, another $300 there, another $400. It all adds up.
Yeah.
And at the end of the year, my wife chooses to pay everything up front and then kind of collect all the money on the back end.
Yeah.
So it's one big lump sum.
Yep.
Otherwise, it'd be $200 a month here or there. So it's whatever. She likes to have it because it's kind of like a savings plan for us.
Yeah.
So at the end of the year, boom, we've got maybe $3,000.
Yeah.
That we otherwise would have given to the federal government in the form of taxes over the course of the year, and we can take that money and turn around and go on vacation.
Exactly. Disney, spend $9,000.
Yeah. I'm going to take $3,000 to Disney.
That gets you in the door.
They wouldn't let me in the door at that point. But the idea, people, you're paying too much in taxes.
Pretty much.
And if you're not doing anything, and frankly, if you don't go and see Jeff a couple of times a year, you're probably paying more in taxes than you have to.
Yes.
As we get into the end of year, and that's what we're going to talk about today, is 100 days left of the year, what can we do? As we get towards the end of the year, then we can say, look, we've already gone through 9-10 months of 2024. We can kind of predict what the next 2 months are going to be like, 2-3 months.
Yeah.
What moves can we do to make sure that we're maximizing, maxing out our retirement accounts, making the Roth conversions to prevent us from going into.
So I was going to say, now is the time you start to prepare for what does a Roth conversion look like. Again, don't pull the trigger just yet. Give it a month and a half or so. And this year might be a little weird, and I say weird only or different only because it's an election year. So first week in November, we have the election. Markets will start to get really weird right up to the election.
Jumpy, right?
Yeah, real jumpy. But again, as soon as you get past the election, it goes back to the norm, hypothetically. And again, then that's when you would say, all right, it's time to do it. And maybe the market's down a little bit, which gives you more shares to convert to the Roth. Is a positive way to look at it.
Well, let me ask you this. When we look at our retirement on paper, I always say this. Somebody who's got a pre-tax IRA, they promise the government, I'll pay the taxes later. And they look and they say, well, I got $1 million in my retirement account.
Yes.
No, you don't.
You don't.
Because you haven't paid the taxes
Yes.
yet. Well, how do you pay the taxes? That's what Jeff is for. He'll help you pay them strategically so that you can pay as few taxes as possible out of that
Yes.
$1 million. But when we go to do Roth conversions,
Mm-hmm.
when the money is in our retirement account, it is what it is. We only have to worry about where the stock market is when we go to take it out.
Exactly.
Because, the thing crashed in 2020 during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, my gosh. But look here 4 years later.
Well, really, at the end of 2020, it came back to life, and it came back with a vengeance. So a lot of people.
If I would have cashed out my retirement in April of 2020,
you'd
I
have
would
lost money.
I would have lost money. But if you
Yeah.
just hang on
Exactly.
and see if the market comes back, then, as far as I'm concerned, nothing ever happened.
Exactly. And it's market volatility. It was the shock of, oh my God, COVID's here, stuff's getting shut down, panic and run. And literally by the end of the year, the market was back up into a positive mode. So that's why you don't want to jump the gun on this. You want to make sure you know where your money is, what it's doing for you, and what your risk tolerance is, which means when I say risk tolerance, it goes over people's heads usually. All that means is how much downdraft or how much could you lose in your account before you really got panicky.
I think, if I remember correctly, the market was at 30,000,
Mhm.
hit a record.
Mhm.
COVID hit, it dropped to 20,000.
Yeah, which
It's
is huge.
Which is huge. It's at 40,000
Exactly.
today.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't matter where the market is until it's time for me to retire and cash
Yes.
out.
If you retired in May, June, July of 2020, you probably went back to work.
Yeah,
just
or
because
you decided not to
exactly,
retire.
or you said no, I'll keep working, or I'll work from home. But again, that's the concept. If you're within 5 years of retirement, you want to make sure you know where your money is.
Yeah.
And not that you want to go hide in the corner in cash. You still need the market, and the reason that you have the market out there is basically to try to beat inflation.
Yeah.
That's it. Everybody's lost sight of the big picture of the market over the last few years. They're like, I made 28%, I made 32%. The reason that you put your money at risk is you're trying to then get a little bit better rate of return to beat inflation.
If I would have put $10,000 in a coffee can in 1990, and I opened that today,
you'd have $10,000.
I'd have $10,000, but my
But-
buying power,
Exactly. Your purchasing power is probably worth $7,000. Maybe not that much. Maybe $8,000. But again, no one's ever going to send you a statement on that and say, "Hey, the dollar went down by 3 cents this year." The dollar's worth a dollar.
the idea is whatever $10,000 is worth today, you put it in the market so that 30 years from now, when you go to take it out, it still
It's
has the same purchasing power
Exactly.
as when I put it in.
Yeah.
If you make more than that,
Hey, that's
so
great.
be it. That's great.
Exactly. It's
You
great.
won. You did.
Yeah.
You did your job right. You had
Yeah.
Jeff working on your stuff for you.
Yeah. But a lot of people lose sight of that, and it becomes this game on, hey, I want a 50% rate of return or some craziness. Again, at the end of the day, 6 to 7 on the norm. That's what you're really gunning for.
So inflation the past couple of years has been insane.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost double digit.
Yeah.
And again, you got to question some of the numbers are skewed that the Fed puts out. And I say skewed from a standpoint, there's stuff that's extracted out of it that they don't count anymore. So it helps to they call streamline or levelize the actual degree or the percentage of inflation increases. But at the end of the day, you still got to go buy food and gas every day, unless you live in a cave.
Yeah.
But
Those
very
numbers
few,
are
very few people do that. So
So when inflation goes up like it did, this is kind of a blip. I think it did it. It did it in the 70s. It did it in the 80s.
exactly.
It does it from time to time. But normally inflation, what the Fed wants to hit, it's 2.5%.
Yeah, 2 to 2.5% is their target. They'll
So
be completely content with that.
No matter how good or bad things are going, you're still running against inflation every
Yes.
single year.
Which means if you were looking at retirement and you said, "Oh, I need $1,000 a month for retirement," you have to inflate that number next year and the year after and the year after that. And if you look at your income threshold 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, it's a crazy number, but that's inflation. So to keep the same dollar your purchasing power equal, you have to have an increase of income of that 2.5%, 3%, 4%, whatever inflation is.
So, if it's 2.5%, what the Fed wants, then my $1,000 today needs to be $1,025.
Yes, and that's got to be
next
your
year.
monthly income.
Yeah,
Exactly, and so on and so forth. So, 20 years down the road, that's not $1,000 anymore. It's $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month, and no, you're not driving a Maserati. You're just the same lifestyle you have today, just keeping up with inflation.
which is why whenever somebody tells these stories of the robber barons back in the day,
Yeah.
Cornelius Vanderbilt was the richest man in the world, and he had $100,000.
Yeah, exactly.
They always say translated to today
Is
that
worth
would be $2.5 billion.
Exactly.
Or whatever.
Yeah, whatever
So
the math works out.
that's inflation.
That's inflation. Exactly.
And that's what you're just trying to beat. So ultimately, end around before we go to commercial break and talk about the news of the day. When it comes to making a Roth conversion at the end of the year, we're also going to talk end of the year planning, 100 days left. I want to do some Roth conversions because I got a little bit of wiggle room before I get bumped up into a new tax bracket. When it comes to Roth conversions, do I want to be conscious of where the stock market is when I do those?
Yeah, because you're pulling money from the market. So the higher the market, the less shares you can convert, if you want to look at it that way. And yeah, you go, hey, I made money over here. But again, when you're doing a Roth conversion, you're usually tax bracket planning, which means, hey, our combined income is $150,000 a year. I can go to 185 because that's where we jump to the next tax bracket. So you'd have to take in all the factors of income, deductions, and then toss on top how much Roth can we convert.
Do you think in 2020 when the market tanked, people said, oh, let's do our Roth conversions now?
Some did. Seriously. Perfect timing. Market tanked. You could get more shares to convert. And in other cases, people were like, no, let's wait and see what transpires because the world's coming to a screeching halt. That's kind of that glass half full, half empty concept.
The idea is you're in it for the long haul.
Yes.
But if you're within 5 years, or even if you're within 10 to 15 years, you always got to take a look, see where you're at. But if you're within 5 years, you say, where are we now?
Exactly. And that's
where
what
do we
that's
think
what
we're
took
going?
place. Yeah, that's what took place in 2008 is everybody was leveraged or their risk factors was through the roof and nobody paid attention to it. And then the 10 craziest things that could happen on a Thursday afternoon happened. And then the markets imploded. So that's where I say that risk factor, the degree, what would your drawdown on your account balance? Where would you go? Ooh, I'm worried. There's a number out there. There's a percentage out there, and a lot of people don't pay attention until it's too late, or they don't realize their portfolio is 100% in the market. And when I say the market, I mean like stocks. And if it really falls, it goes quick. I mean, you could be down 40% before you even batted an eye at it. That's what happened in 08. And then a lot of people were like, oh my gosh. And that's the reality of what is your risk tolerance, and again, you're buying stuff. Why are you buying it? And the question is, if it's still that reason is still valid, keep it.
And the closer we get to 65, or in my case, Jeff always reminds me, it'll be more like 75 or 80 for you, Josh. The closer we get, do people get a lot more conservative? Obviously,
you reel back, but you still need some money, and each person's different. Depends upon where the income's coming from, if it's pension, if it's inheritance, if it's just raw dollars sitting in a bank account. Each person's going to be a little bit different as they go in. But we've seen people 100% in cash. You're going to run out of money. Again, you're averaging
the coffee can people.
Exactly, 4.6-ish interest rate currently. But if the Fed really does lower rates, which is what they're saying they're going to do next week, the more that the Fed drops the rate, the faster your money market or your cash account, the interest rate drops. So,
but nobody probably ever comes to you and say, "Hey, Jeff, I'm planning on retiring next year. Can we move everything into this dog coin that I saw online?"
No. One individual, but he's younger and he knows the game.
He's got time to make
and
it
he's
up
got time.
if it all blows up in his face.
Yeah. So far, so good for him, though.
The idea, well, good. Give me his number. I want to talk to him. The idea is that you make your money work for you. You pay yourself first.
Yes.
You get yourself set up for retirement, and year after year after year, I mean, this, my retirement, this is a 30-year
Exactly.
process for me,
Yeah.
but year after year, there's a chance to keep more of our money just in the regular taxes that we have to pay, and sometimes we don't necessarily have to pay. You just have to find somebody like Jeff to look at your tax returns, look at your life on paper.
Mm-hmm.
How many kids do you have? How many houses do you have?
Exactly.
How many businesses do you have? And he can say, we could do this, that, and the other, and you can wind up maybe saving $2, $3, $4
Exactly.
next year on your taxes, and then you go back to your old tax guy and say, "Where the heck were you on this?"
Well, there is tax planners, and there are basically just tax preparers.
Tax preparers.
And there's some that whatever is put in front of them, that's what they put on paper.
And I can't
And
imagine
they're good at it.
that these people that they hire, seasonal hires in March and April to come in and do people's taxes, they're probably fly by night. They probably aren't looking at my taxes. Well, next year you could do this, or hey, you could do that, or here, let me hook you up with this. They're just cranking in and doing the numbers
whatever
and
shows,
getting them out.
Yep, whatever shows on the tax, whatever you give to them, they put on the tax return, as long as it's legal,
Right.
Or ethical. They're putting on a tax return, calling it a day.
But that's why you want to have a relationship
Exactly
with your tax guy, because I know you and you know me, and you want the best,
exactly
for
best
me.
outcome. That's the whole concept behind it.
So there are tax planners and there are tax preparers. What do you have?
Exactly.
And if you want a tax planner and you want somebody to help you keep more of what's yours, give Jeff a call. 636-394-5524 is the phone number. CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com is the website to go to. You give Jeff a call, get an appointment on the calendar, go to the appointment, talk to Jeff, and then after that, you can decide whether or not you want to try to keep more of your money or whether or not you want to try to keep going it alone. I would suggest talking to Jeff. In full disclosure, he is my tax planner. Give him a call, 636-394-5524. When we come back, news of the day, and will the Fed make that rate cut after all?
Keep What's Yours continues with Josh Gilbert and Jeff Zufall.
All right, back on the show, we talked a lot about, how you can keep more of what's yours. You just have to know it exists, and then you have to find somebody who can actually implement it into your life on your paycheck every 2 weeks. Or how often do normal people get paid?
Some are monthly, some are bi-weekly, weekly. It just depends on, typically a lot of construction companies are weekly. Anybody in more of a managerial standpoint, it's monthly.
Mm-hmm. Monthly?
Yeah, and then there's other people that are bi-weekly. So that's 26 pays a year.
Man, I think if I got paid monthly, it would all be gone by the second week.
Yes.
And then I'd be like, whoa.
Yeah. But you get accustomed to, if you got a chunk of money one time a month, you'd after a month or two, you figure that out and be like, hey, wait.
I have seen that in some industries using certain technologies, people get paid daily.
Some do that too. That's kind of
wild.
the newer trend.
Yeah.
But I'll say most of them are bi-weekly and monthly.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about what's going on in the news today. And the biggest thing is rate cuts.
Yes.
The bet is that coming up, the Fed will do a rate cut. What are the most recent numbers? And
they're basically saying it's going to be 1/4 point, and it'll be next Thursday when they announce.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, so that's what they're actually saying. So they meet again this month, September.
So what happened over the last couple of months where we were saying, oh, they won't do it until after the election, and then a couple of months pass, and now they're like, well, they're going to do it next Thursday.
Well, it's kind of a weird scenario. The Fed sees this as unemployment rising. They see the economy slowing. Now, again, they're looking at totally different. They have access to information we can't get. And hopefully they're the smartest people in the room, and they're making the right decisions. But they're looking at the economy, not the market, but the economy, and they see it slowing down. So when they see it slowing down, they will decrease interest rates to spark activity and get stuff going again. So they meet September and November, and everything was hedging that there'd be the second week of November is when they meet, which is right after the election. that would be when they would decrease rates. Now they're saying they're going to do it now. There are even people over the summer calling for an emergency rate cut of like a 0.5 point, which the economists are jumping up and down saying, no, we don't need it. Now, is it that the Fed has promised it to the markets and they need to do it to save face? We'll see. But the outlook is it's a 0.5 point decrease.
And
Or quarter point. Quarter point.
Yeah. And the economy is very delicate.
It's very delicate. So again, you say what could happen if they do that? Again, this is the Fed funds rate. This is what banks loan money to each other overnight.
This isn't necessarily our mortgage rates.
Exactly. You're talking prime. That's what we borrow money at. It's prime plus something. But what it will do is indirectly force down prime at the end of the day. And that's kind of what the Fed does as they go forward, knowing that there's the repercussions coming back, and it'll pull down interest rates. Now, mortgage rates have slipped. There were 6.25, 6.45 as of yesterday, or as of Thursday last week. So again, you say, hey, and they've come down. They were 7.5-ish, a little bit. So they've come down a bunch. But again, I say the younger, new home buyers are still having a hard time to get into the market. One, very competitive. There's just no in the Midwest. There's no inventory. And then the flip of that is the higher interest rates. They're accustomed, hearing us talk, hey, I got a 2.2%, 30-year. That'll probably never, ever happen again.
Right. That's why I'm keeping my rate.
And that's why a lot of people are not moving. Because
even if I wanted to move or had the money to move,
yes,
I want to keep my house and maybe rent it out.
You would almost be forced to in today's environment. I see a lot more people doing that because
the rate is just insane.
Because when you go to that new house, you're going to be at 6.5. And again, you say, what's the historical rate for mortgages? It's higher than what you think, more in the 7.5, 8% range historically. But again, we've seen unprecedented because of 2008, the banking collapse in 2008. We've seen negative, if not zero, interest rates for the last 10 years.
And I am a new homeowner. I didn't buy my first house until 2020, in my late 30s.
Yeah.
So as far as I'm concerned, it's always been like this. No,
it really hasn't. There's people, the older generations will talk of, I had a 14% interest rate.
Well, I
get that.
I need to pull back, and I need to talk to my parents. I need to pull back, and I need to talk to my older siblings.
Yes.
Who bought houses in the mid 2000s.
Yeah.
And find out what they were paying.
They were in the 5s.
Okay.
But again, the norm, my first house was 9.25. Nobody thought anything of it. It was the norm. Never had seen a 2% or a 1.5 interest rate. So again, that's kind of what the Fed is battling, is trying to get the new home buyers maybe a foot in the door in a sense, to be able to purchase homes.
Which a little bit more easier, more convincing.
Yeah, kind of sparks that activity again. There'll be a ton of refinances for people who bought a house at 7.5. It's now at 6.5 or 6 if the rates get there. But again, it's not that the Fed is doing this to make our life easier. They're looking at it from how do they manipulate the economy down, 6 months from now, 6 years from now, 60 years from now. And that's what the Fed actually does.
And it does seem like younger people are kind of being scared off because they've known is 2.5, mortgage rates. But as a financial advisor, you're a wealth advisor, you're a tax advisor. I know we can't really give specific advice over the air. That's what going in to see Jeff is all about. But would you say that buying and owning a home is typically someone's biggest, most valuable
it's the biggest
investment
expense that you're going to make. May not be your biggest asset, but it will be your biggest expense that you will make from a purchase standpoint. Unless you like very exotic cars, and that's a different story.
The $2 million Bugatti
exactly.
outside of someone's
$50,000
trailer
house. But again, that's kind of that personal preference as we go forward. There's some people that should never own a home, period, end of story. They should be renters, and there's nothing wrong with that. And there's other people that, they can buy a house, they can fix everything and go from there. The biggest issue is coming along from it's good if you own a home because the prices keep escalating. But it's bad if you've never owned a home to break into that market. It's really tough.
I mean, buy high, sell low.
Yeah, that's exactly what you don't want to do.
Right.
But again, that's where everybody's sitting saying, oh, I got this giant house and I'm going to sell it, and I'm a downsize. The problem is, where are you going to go? And when you downsize, it's not what you think you're downsizing to.
Downsizing is expensive.
It gets super expensive.
It's more expensive now than ever.
Yeah. And again, then on the housing market, the concept is if you're single, you can have a $250,000 exclusion on the gain. And if you're married filing jointly, it's $500,000 exclusion on the gain. We're actually seeing some homes being sold where they're hitting that mark. They're getting really close to stepping over those boundaries. So that's kind of where we sit.
Well, let's wait and see what happens. But if the tea leaf readers are correct in saying that there'll be a rate cut come Thursday, we'll talk about it on these airwaves come next Saturday.
Next Saturday we'll talk all about it.
And some people saying we don't need this, and the idea of the economy. I look at it like a train. And for the last couple of years, it's been a bullet train.
Yes.
Well, you don't slow down a bullet train by slamming on the brakes.
Yeah.
That's how you get a full derailment.
Exactly.
So it's like a gradual slow down, and then, are we going too slow? And then you'll pick back up.
Speed it back up.
So that's what the Fed is doing. But, do we need to pick steam back up? We need, obviously what they're doing is working. Inflation is way down.
It's come way down, yeah.
And inflation is kind of normal.
Yeah.
What's done is done. The prices at the grocery store aren't coming down.
Yeah.
What happened
Did you know that there is now a grocery store index, and they can do a composite price of and they say that it's come down 18%. I don't know who's compiling these numbers, but I saw a report a couple weeks ago, and it said that there was it's a grocery store index on the average consumer, what the average consumer pays to get those goods and services.
Wow. So, well, here's the thing. They went up. Some of the products that I shop for went up 100%.
Skyrocketed. Yeah, like
Since
enough to where you
2020.
quit buying them.
Yeah. Right? My generic poopsie. Poopsie cola.
Yes.
So, that's what I'm drinking these days.
Yep.
But, if they're down 18%, that's good news.
It's a start. I mean, it's got a ways to go.
Walking through the grocery store, I'm still feeling it.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah, everybody does.
But do we need to lower interest rates? We'll leave that to people smarter than us.
Exactly.
And if they do it, they see something that we might not. Obviously, inflation coming down. What they've been doing is working. Do we want to mess with that?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not smart enough to make that
Do you
call.
accelerate the economy by decreasing the rates to kick it in? I mean, I don't think it's political. It's too close to the election to really make a big difference. But again, that was the concern, is if they did it early enough in the year, they could spark enough activity to lean it one way or the other.
And dropping a quarter of a point. I'm like a quarter of a point. What difference does that make? When will we see what effect that has on the economy? Is it 3 months later?
Yeah, I mean, you'll see
months later?
You'll see it a couple of months down the road where
Like
you start to
that
see
day the market might spike.
Yeah, it might spike just because they lowered rates. Whoopie-doopie-doo.
Right.
And then it takes.
It spikes when they just talk about it.
And then it will, like a money market rate will adjust immediately. If they raise rates, it'll take them 30 days to adjust upwards. Credit cards will, lag. But typically on the upside, they go next day. On a downside, it takes them a little bit to kind of follow in suit.
My biggest fear is that they drop the rate a quarter of a point, and then the next month they go, oh my gosh, we made a mistake. We have to raise it now a point.
So if anybody is a little older, late 70s, early 80s, a guy named Paul Volcker was running the Fed. They raised interest rates to calm it down a little bit, and they got up in the same range we are today, about 7.5%, 8%. And then they said, hey, it's all clear. Inflation is gone. We're going to start to decrease rates, and everything is great. They went 10 months of rate decreases, and then all of a sudden they went, oops, inflation's here.
Yeah.
And then that's how we ended up at 14, 15% rates, because it was a slight misstep in the market. So again, hopefully the smartest people are running the show, and we'll see what happens.
Oops.
Yeah. It was a big oops.
Well, we'll find out. All right. Stay tuned to this show because we will tell you week in, week out what is happening and what the effect may or may not be. And we'll also tell you microcosmically on your own personal, everyone's economy is different.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
My economy is different than your economy.
Exactly.
How do I make this economy, my economy, work best for me? Jeff can help you do that. We talk about stuff like that on this show all the time. But to get super specific about your personal economy, you got to bring in tax returns to Jeff. You got to bring in your paycheck stubs to Jeff. You got to, bring pictures of the kids in so Jeff can count. 1, 2, 3. You've got 4 kids.
That's right. Yeah, 4.
Didn't you say somebody came in and you asked them how many kids they had and they forgot?
Yeah. Well, we've had it where we've done tax returns, and then 2 months later they call and they go, "Hey, you did my return, but you forgot to put my kids on there." And I was like, "Oh," and we look back at it and we're like, "We didn't even know you had kids."
Yeah, you forgot to tell
Nobody
us.
said a word.
So you got to tell Jeff what your situation is like and be honest and open. And I always think the best thing is to tell, I always tell my wife, let's tell him everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Exactly.
Because we might want to, well, I don't tell him all the bad stuff we're doing. He might say, that's terrible.
Exactly.
But here's how you fix it.
And do this.
And do
that'll
this
offset.
instead.
Exactly.
And you'll be in much better position.
Yes.
Give him a call, 636-394-5524, Capital Advisory GRP. Go in and be sheepish and say,
Yes.
ooh, we like to spend a lot of money at Disney.
That's
And Jeff will say, well, there's nothing I can do about that. Disney people are the way they are.
yes.
But we can save some money over here.
Yeah.
To offset your
What you spend over there.
Yeah. Yeah. Or hey, get one of those Disney cards. And
Yes.
maybe get some cash back on it.
$5.
Yeah.
Won't get out of the parking lot.
Hey, look, $5 is $5.
That's right.
636-394-5524, CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com.
Keep What's Yours continues with Josh Gilbert and Jeff Zufall.
We do continue. We are back, and we're talking about the economy. We're talking about your personal economy, how you can make things better for yourself. Give Jeff a call, 636-394-5524. Go in and see him. Bring your tax returns. Tell him this is my life on paper. How can we keep more of our money in our pocketbooks?
Yes.
And less going out to the federal government. He can help you with that. Speaking of taxes, President Biden, who sometimes I forget. Oh, he's
still our president.
Still president for another 3 months or so.
Yes.
They had mentioned this 15% flat corporate tax on everybody.
Yes.
15%, no matter what, you're paying 15%.
It was the everyone needs to pay their fair share concept, and the evil corporations are getting out of this tax, and we're going to impose a flat 15%
No
tax.
ifs, ands, or buts.
No ifs, ands, or buts.
But then comes 603 pages of ifs, ands, or buts.
The rule book, basically giving you 603 pages of exemptions and ways to get out of it. And the U.S. Treasury is now saying that maybe on the best side, 2.6% will be the average tax rate. So,
no, wait a minute. So it's supposed to be 15% flat, no questions.
yes,
No loopholes, no nothing. You're paying 15%, if not more.
exactly.
Boom, corporate tax. And
Yep.
then 603 pages of loopholes come out.
Just the other
And-
day, they just released the 603 pages. That's why it's funny. I mean, this was put in play a long time ago, but they really didn't have guidance as to what are you going to pay 15% on.
And the
So-
Treasury Department has come out with 603 pages,
Mhm.
and once it all shakes out, corporations will, on average, pay 2.6%.
That's it. So,
What are we doing? What are we doing?
so the
Here.
PR sounded great of, they're going to pay their fair share, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, once the special interests got a hold of it, adjusted it, twisted it, and that's where we are.
And let's
So-
be honest, whether it's Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Donald
Makes no
Trump,
difference.
George W. Bush,
Yep.
Barack Obama, the special interests will always be
Always
there.
win.
And they're not dealing with the president. They're
No.
dealing with the senators.
Sidebar,
and
making
the
the
House.
deals. Yeah,
They're making the deal. It
Yep.
don't matter who's president. The special interest is going to get what they want.
exactly. And basically, they won. So they put that out there as a 15% flat tax, and they figured it out. Now we have 603 pages of loopholes and adjustments.
And we'll see if Well, number one, we'll see if there's another debate. Number two, if there is, we'll see if they bring this up.
No, and the worst part was in the debate, nothing was said about national debt, economy, what their game plan would be to get it under control, fix it, whatever. It was
I was chasing a 3-year-old around, and the only thing I heard was something about dogs and cats.
Yeah,
and and it's like I didn't get to hear most of what was talked about. They didn't even bring up the national debt. They didn't bring up the corporate tax rate.
Nope, didn't bring it up. It was all more of the little political, whatever you want to call it, but. Again, and that was the next morning on CNBC. There's a couple of guys that went ballistic because none of the topics that really affect us day in, day out,
yes,
they were untouched. So, yes, maybe it was the first one, get it under your belt. Maybe if they have a second one, then they get deep into policy as to, hey, this is how we're going to fix it, or, work with it.
Again, these are politicians,
Oh, yeah.
and talking about policy, which actually affects us. They don't generally do that.
No, they shy away from it on both sides.
They normally get on their grandstand.
And it's the PR, hey, we're going to do a 15% corporate tax, and they're going to pay their fair share.
And when it comes out 603 pages later, it's more like 2.5%.
Yeah.
Whoops.
Nothing happens. So,
U.S. business, let's talk about something
positive.
good. U.S. business confidence.
Yes. So the reading came out, basically and this is from the National Federation of Independent Businesses, and they said a week ago Tuesday that the Small Business Optimism Index rose 2.2%. So we are at the highest reading since February of 22. So take that for what it's worth.
What does that mean, boots on the ground, me and you?
That means that a lot of the small businesses are not, they're seeing a positive growth, whether it's containment, whatever you want to call it. It's good news, which means it's positive. Stuff's working, so on and so forth. What we will see is, possibly depending upon how this election runs, you don't want to see where people start to get laid off. You saw the unemployment numbers ticked up a couple weeks ago, and everybody's like, oh, it's a global recession and blah, blah, blah. The problem is access to information. Everybody panics way quicker than what they should. So again, it just means that everything's heading in the right direction. So maybe with a rate decrease, if that really happens, the combination of, some of these reports on a positive note, rate decreases, it helps propel the economy back.
So even small businesses are pretty confident about the direction that they're heading.
Exactly. So,
well, that's good. So that's good news.
Yeah. So we'll see.
All right. Well, with the last 5 minutes that we have left of this show, we have 100 days left in the year.
Yes.
What should we be thinking about doing with these last 100 days? Keep in mind, there's an election.
So take that with a grain of salt. But basically, get organized. Start looking at what you got going. Pull your data together for the year tax-wise versus waiting, and then you're like, oh, it's April 14th. I got to get this stuff going. Right. That's an issue. So get organized. Just start pulling data.
And Jeff has said it over and over again. Please do not bring me an old Reebok box.
Yes,
your old Nike shoebox.
Yes. We have it. So people listen. They didn't bring us shoe boxes, but they brought us grocery store bags jammed with stuff. God. So it was even worse.
Well, you said you didn't want shoe boxes.
Yes. But go in and basically evaluate the deductions that you're sitting on today and look at it. How many people what's your W-4 look like, which is your withholding, off your paycheck stubs. Big picture, are there anything that you could save for, big expenses, energy improvements? You do get the credit this year, for windows, doors, insulation. There's even a line item in there for electrical work, believe that or not.
Whoa.
So the EV credits are out there, even though
anything for plumbing. I had $400 plumbing bill.
No plumbing, unfortunately, unless you buy. It wouldn't even. None of that would work.
Yeah,
they'd have to tear the wall out, so you get new insulation and put the plumbing in. How's that?
No, I didn't do that.
So the other thing is, we're sitting at the time of the year. We usually say January, increase your 401k contributions, your retirement contributions. And don't go, oh, I'm going to do $10,000 this year. Do it in small increments, 1-2%. So if you haven't increased it this year, look at that in the fourth quarter of this year.
And can you get by? Can you still buy your gas, groceries?
Exactly. You got to put food on the table.
Right.
I get
and pay
that.
your heating bill.
Yep. But
And if
maybe you bump it 1%. It's out of sight, out of mind. Maybe
you'll never know.
Don't even see it.
You'll never notice it.
Yeah. And so basically that. And then the other thing is, this is where this disclaimer of the election is coming is go look at your taxable accounts, like what we talked about, your brokerage accounts. Do you have massive capital gains sitting in it, or is it balanced? And you do tax lot trading, which means you trade winners, take some profit off the table, and sell the losers, and offset one another and reduce your taxable gain.
And that's the point in this whole thing, Jeff. I talk to you all the time. I know how all this stuff works, but that's the point in my life where I say I can't do this on my own.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Jeff, look at here's my login.
Exactly.
I printed this out for you to look at. Is now the time to do this tax lot trading? But there's a lot of people that you see on a daily basis that they find it fun, or they get it. They get the concept, and they could do it themselves.
Exactly.
That's where I personally draw the line, and I say this is too much for me. The math is not my strong suit. Jeff, should I do this stuff?
Yeah, and that's why we say prior to this election, we're going to get market volatility. It's coming. We haven't seen it. We've seen, downdrafts of 700-800 points a day. Back a couple of weeks ago, 3,000 points over 4 days. Don't panic. It's not the end of the world. We've been through, I don't know how many election years. Mathematically, market's done perfectly fine after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a knee-jerk reaction. Don't panic and sell, unless you look at what you own today and go, why do I own this? If you have no valid point, sell it. Get out of the market.
And put it into something
Just
else?
Go cash for the time being. If you're uncertain, just go cash.
Go to Disney with it?
Well, you can go to Disney, but I don't suggest that. But no, that's why I say market volatility is coming. It's coming around the corner. So don't be shocked if one day you see where the market's down a couple thousand points.
If you want to do tax lot trading, if you want to do a Roth conversion, you might not want to wait. Or maybe you do want to wait.
Maybe you do. I mean, again, it depends upon your situation, but be aware of these items out there. Where you say, I'm going to do a Roth and it's going to be X, and then you realize you don't have X anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's now, Y, because the market went down.
Yeah.
So
it does matter what time you do these things.
Yes.
And it's all about playing the numbers.
It's playing the numbers. That's it. If you have profits, you could sell them, but you need a loser, losing stock to offset that gain. Stick it in your pocket. Go from there.
I got a lot of losers this year, so
yeah. There's more losers in there than you think this year.
Yeah. So you'll be doing a lot of math for me.
Oh yeah.
But 100 days left, and if you don't know how to do the numbers game, but you want to capitalize on this, you want to say, let's close the year out in a positive way, and come April, my tax bill will be lower because I did stuff.
Exactly.
Give Jeff a call, 636-394-5524. You're not going to keep more of what's yours if you don't do anything.
Exactly. It's going to be the same this year, next year, 5 years from now.
And again, the government doesn't care.
Yeah.
I always say, if I do the right things, the government, the people at the IRS don't ring the bell and they go, ding,
it's
ding, ding.
Josh. He has
Josh
his own
did
bell.
the right thing. Oh my gosh, he kept more of his money.
Yeah.
They don't know or care. They don't know or care if I pay more in taxes.
Yep.
I am just a number on a piece of paper, and the money comes through.
Number in a computer.
In a computer. There's not even a person that looks at it these days. It just goes through the system.
Yep.
So they don't care if we pay more. They don't care if we pay less.
Well, they do if you don't pay enough.
Legally.
Then legally they're going to go, hey,
legally you pay
what are
less.
you doing here?
Legally paying less, that's the name of the game, and that's Jeff Zufall. 636-394-5524. CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com. We are just numbers on a piece of paper to them. Yes. I am a Social Security number.
The windowless building.
Yeah, the windowless building, which these days more and more have no people in them. Yeah. It's just computers running everything. No, they do have people, and they're on the streets collecting
exactly.
Tax
They're
revenue
out and about now
from the tax dodgers. Yes. But if you want to keep more of what's yours, give Jeff a call, 636-394-5524, and there's 100 days left in the year. So now's the time to start doing something to close out 2024 on a positive note.
Positive note, that's right.
And that's why you give Jeff a call. He can take a look at your stuff, and you want to see him realistically couple times a year?
2 times a year. I mean, typically to get up and going, it might be every 30 to 40 days. Once we're up and running, it's every 6 months. And there's, phone calls in between that, if there's issues. So,
But it's all about keeping more of what's yours. And, I look at my tax bill and the last couple of years, we're saving a couple $1,000s.
Exactly.
We're keeping a couple $1,000s more every year because of things that Jeff has set us up to do. And you can keep more of what's yours as well. 636-394-5524, CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com. Jeff, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next week.
You bet.
You've been listening to Keep What's Yours with Josh Gilbert and Jeff Zufall, Senior Tax Strategist and Wealth Manager at Capital Advisory Group. To learn more, call 636-394-5524 or visit CapitalAdvisoryGrp.com.